An 8-year-old boy was playing in a small village near Mount Fuji in Japan. The year was 1914. The roads in this village were unpaved dirt paths where horses and bicycles were the only things that moved. And then something appeared that this boy had never seen before. 4 wheels, an engine, a machine to Yatsumana, had moved itself without any animal pulling it. It was a Ford Model T. The boy ran after it. He chased it down the road until his legs could not carry him any further. He stood there breathing hard, watching the dust settle where the machine had disappeared, and he made a silent decision that would take him 50 years and more failures than most people could survive to finally fulfill. That boy was Soichiro Honda, and today his name appears on more than 30 million vehicles every single year across every country on Earth. But the story of how a village blacksmith's S on with no formal education, no money, no connections, and no luck became the founder of one of the test manufacturing companies in human history is not the story they tell you in business schools. Welcome to World Unveiled. This is the untold story of Honda's creation. Soichiro Honda was born in 1906 in Komyo, a small village in Shizuoka Prefecture. His father was a blacksmith who also repaired bicycles on the side. 5 of each. Honda's siblings had already died from various illnesses before reaching adulthood. His parents placed enormous hope in this surviving child. But Honda had no interest in school. While other children studied, he was underneath bicycles, pulling apart engines, riassi, embealing mechanisms with his hands covered in grease. At 16, he saw a newspaper advertisement. A company in Tokyo called Art Shokai needed a technician. Honda wrote a letter. The reply came back positive. He packed his belongings, left his village and his parents behind, and arrived in Tokyo believing he was about to begin his mechanical career. What he found instead was a mop and a baby. The owner of Art Shokai put the new arrival to work cleaning floors and babysitting the owner's child. Honda was humiliated and miserable, but Hiko would not go home. He had told his parents he was going to Tokyo to build something. Returning to the village as a failure who had spent his time cleaning and babysitting was not something his pride could accept. So he stayed, and he waited. The wait paid off. Within months, the owner began assigning Honda to workshop duties, and the transformation was immediate. Honda absorbed mechanical knowledge at a speed that astonished the other workers. He understood engines intuitively, as if the logic of mechanical systems was a language he had been born speaking. When Art Shokai built 2 racing cars using second-hand engines, Honda worked alongside the driver as the engineer, and both cars won their class at the 1924 Japanese Motor Championship. It was in that moment, standing beside a vehicle that his hands had helped build, that Honda understood what the rest of his life would look like. In 1928, at just 22 years old, Honda's employer trusted him enough to put him in charge of a new branch in Hamamatsu. Honda arrived with 1 worker. Within 2 years, he had 30. He then designed a racing car for the company that reached 120 kilometers per hour, breaking every existing Japanese speed record. That record stood for 20 years. But Honda wanted his own company. In 1936, at 30 years old, he and a friend founded Tokai Seiki Heavy Industries, making his friend the president while Honda focused on what he did best: building things. The problem was money. Honda had none. He worked at Art Shokai during the day and spent his nights in his own workshop trying to manufacture piston rings. The work was grinding and relentless, and the results were terrible. Failure after failure. His health deteriorated from the exhaustion of working 2 jobs simultaneously. Then he enrolled in a metallurgy program at a university to understand why his pistons kept failing. He attended classes without registering formally because he had no money for fees. The university eventually threatened to expel him. Honda told them he was not interested in a certificate. He was interested in knowledge. After 3 years of combined study and sleepless nights of manufacturing, in 1939 he finally produced a piston ring that worked. He quit his job at Art Shokai immediately and committed completely to his own company. He approached Toyota with his piston rings. Toyota rejected 47 of his 50 designs. The remaining 3 were accepted. It was enough. Orders began arriving. Honda hired 2,000 workers. For a brief moment, the dream looked real. Then the war took everything. Japan entered World War II, and the military took control of Honda's company, demoting him to a minor management role while his workers were conscripted into military service. In 1944, an American bomb struck the factory directly. Whatever the bomb left standing, just so. Earthquake of 1945 finished. When Japan surrendered following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Mashin Honda was left with nothing. He sold the surviving piston ring operation to Toyota for the equivalent of what most people would consider a modest sum, and found himself unemployed, nearly broke, and surrounded by a country whose entire economy had collapsed. The year was 1946. Honda was 40 years old. Most men in that situation would have accepted that the story was over. Honda spent a year doing almost nothing. He had earned the right to rest. Then he noticed something. Japan had no petrol. Public transport had collapsed. People could not move around their destroyed cities. Honda found a small engine that the Japanese Imperial Army had used to power wireless radio equipment. He attached it to a bicycle. It worked. People who saw the motorized bicycle immediately wanted one. Honda began building more. The engines ran out and he designed his own. He did not have enough money to manufacture at scale, so he wrote letters by hand to 18,000 bicycles. Shop owners across Japan explaining what he had built and asking for their financial support in advance. 3,000 of them said yes and sent money. The Honda Technical Research Institute was born. Within 3 years, he had produced a motorcycle called the Dream that was engineered specifically around what Japanese consumers actually needed after the devastation of war. Something cheap, reliable, and easy to repair. Then, in 1958, came the Super Cub, a motorcycle so perfectly designed for ordinary people that it outsold Triumph and Harley-Davidson in America within years of its introduction. By 1960, Honda was the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world. In 1968, the company sold its 10 millionth unit, but Soichiro Honda had never forgotten the Ford Model T. He had never forgotten the 8-year-old boy chasing a car down a dirt road. In the early 1960s, despite being told by practically everyone around him that the Japanese car market was already controlled by Toyota and Nissan, and there was no room for a new entrant, Honda decided to build cars. His first pickup truck failed. His first sports car sold barely 1,000 units. But Honda kept building. He kept testing. He kept rejecting his own designs when they were not good enough. In 1972, after years of failed attempts and dozens of rejected prototypes, Honda launched the Civic, the car that would still be in production more than 50 years later. A car so well engineered, so reliable, and so suited to what ordinary people actually needed from a vehicle that it became one of the most consistently successful automotive products in history. By 1980, Honda Motor Company was the third largest manufacturer in Japan. Within another decade, it was the third largest in the world. Soichiro Honda retired in 1973, the year after the Civic launched. He had spent 67 years building towards something that began with a dirt road and a Ford Model T in a Japanese village. He died in August 1991. What he left behind was not just a company. It was proof that failure is not the opposite of success. It is the path to it. Toyota rejected his pistons. The war destroyed Dia, his factory. An earthquake finished what the bomb started. He ran out of money more times than most people experienced genuine setbacks in an entire lifetime. And from each of those collapses, he built something larger than what had been destroyed. The 8-year-old boy who chased a car down a dirt road near Mount Fuji never stopped running. He just changed what he was running toward. This is World Unveiled.